Welcome to another episode of The Second Coming. I'm here with Brother T. I'm your host, Jason Keeton, and we are excited to be here with you today. Brother T, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jason?
Very well, very well.
Good deal.
So,
Glad to be back here. Glad to be back here with you on the Second Coming.
yes.
No one left to crucify.
No one at all. No. So I was reading my Paul Selig, finishing up the first book with Paul Selig and enjoying that. But and maybe because of the reading. So my question today is for you. Can you look back over your life and pick out certain, maybe they were things that happened, maybe they were books you've read, maybe they were encounters you've had, that really leveled up your spiritual awakening, that really made, like, now you can look back and you can say, oh, that was one. Oh, well, when this happened, would you mind taking us through some of the things that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, I'll be glad to do that. Let's just take a quick breath here and do an attunement and realign ourselves here in the upper room, just for a brief moment. Let's take a good deep breath. I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am free. I am free. I am free. I have come to the upper room. I am here. I am here. I am here. It will be so. Behold, I make all things new. God is. God is. God is. You know, the earliest experience that I know as remarkable was when I was in the Navy, actually. I was in Barcelona, Spain, and my buddies and I went over. We'd been on going around in a circle in the Strait of Gibraltar for almost 3 months, and so we finally got some shore time in Barcelona. Anyway, one of my buddies had a Catholic background, and there was a cathedral there he wanted to go to. I have no idea which one it was or where it was, but it was in Barcelona. And so we go in, and then we go down to kind of like a basement level, and there's a little enclave down there, stairs down in this little bitty room, probably couldn't have been more than a couple hundred square feet. And then another little side room, not much bigger than a closet, but you could walk in and you could go around the casket of the saint. There was a saint, and she was buried there in a glass casket, and she had a veil over her face. Well, I didn't know anything about any of this. I hadn't gone to church at that point. I quit going to church when I was 16 and didn't go much before that. So I'm just kind of, patronizing my buddy and my friends. And so we all go in there and go kind of single file around the casket and come back out. But suddenly as I came out, and I'm just looking at this frail figure, and she couldn't have even been, like maybe 4'10", very small figure, but mostly all the flesh was gone, it was mostly bone and still in a dress, but a veil over her face. But suddenly peace came over me in a way that I'd never experienced before. And so when we came back out of that room, the other little anteroom there, I just leaned up against the wall and I just slid down and I just sat there and I didn't want to leave. And my buddies are looking at me going, okay, they used to call me Little Willie. They say, what's Little Willie doing over there, right? And so I didn't want to leave and I just sat there. Now, I don't know how long, it couldn't have been more than a couple of minutes. But I was in a state of presence, and I was feeling the energy of love, and I was at peace, more so than I'd ever remembered before. So that was my first real peak spiritual experience, right? And I'm about maybe, 20 years old at that point, 21. And then I got busy with my life, right? And I didn't participate in religion or spirituality, didn't know anything about Eastern philosophy or meditation or Buddhism or any of those things. I just wanted to make a lot of money because it seemed like the people that had a lot of money were happiest. I know it doesn't solve all your problems, but it solves a lot of problems. So let's make a lot of money. So I was on that pathway, climbing the corporate ladder, and clawing my way up the ladder, etc. So I got to a place where I was becoming successful, quote unquote, as far as, well, my friends and family might say I was. Then I wanted to make as much money as possible, so I started trading. And I saw this book at the bookstore because I went looking for some more information, and this was before Amazon. and I found this book called The Rich Man's Secret. I'm like, oh, that's it. I got to have that. What's The Rich Man's Secret? I need to know what that is. And it was a book by Vernon Howard. And Vernon was teaching Zen philosophy, but he didn't tell you what he was teaching. And so a couple of weeks later, I'm out washing my car, my new Corvette, and I'm down on all fours, and I'm washing this tire, and I'm like, what does it mean to be present? What does it mean to be present? I don't really know. I'm trying to figure out, what does that mean? And suddenly I had an intimate moment with my tire. And as I'm washing it, I'm like, I'm having an intimate moment with my tire. And that was my first real grasp of what being present is. I wasn't thinking about the future. I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't thinking about my work. I was being intimate with that tire, noticing it. And I still remember it today, just like I was there, 40 years ago, or whatever that was, 30 years ago anyway. And so that started me on a pathway of studying Buddhism. And I began to accept that maybe it's possible that we're reincarnating. And as soon as I realized that's possible, then I'm like, okay, how do you get off the planet? And that was my overriding desire, my overriding question was answer that question. How do you get off the planet if we're just going to continue to reincarnate over and over and over? How do you get off the planet? The Buddhists talked about it as enlightenment, but they said, well, you can't do it in a single lifetime. It'll probably take you many, many lifetimes. But if you go to a cave somewhere in the Himalayas and meditate for 40 years, you might be able to attain it in this lifetime. And in our past, it was very unusual for people to attain enlightenment. Those that did were considered saints and mystics and gurus, and sometimes they led groups of people, and sometimes they led no one and just disappeared and laid their body down. But things have changed, and what has changed is that the energy of the planet has changed. We are now in the final stages of this cycle of growth, of creating more of God, if you will. And there's several hundred years left in this cycle, but this cycle I think was 250 million years or something like that. But what's happening now is things are speeding up, and spirit and the vibration of the planet has changed dramatically since the harmonic conversion in 1987, and subsequently in 2000, Cryon, the magnetic master, has shifted the polarity of the planet. And so now the grid of the planet, energetic grid of the planet, has shifted pretty dramatically. And it's possible for everyday citizens like you and I, Jason, to become enlightened. Now, I've had subsequent to asking that question, how do you get off the planet? That's when A Course in Miracles showed up in my life, and it really helped me to begin to understand the hero's journey, my journey, your journey, Jesus' journey, right? Jesus, it wasn't about Jesus becoming God. It was about Christ in form here on planet Earth, that first issuance, if you will, that first assumption of Jesus. When he said, when you see me, you see the Father, he's teaching us that you and I all have the capacity to arrest our egoic thought system, the mind of fear, and allow our true self, which is the voice of God for all practical purposes. Jesus calls it the Holy Spirit in A Course in Miracles, nothing more than your right mind. And it is that part of you that always resides in the upper room, if you will, is always available to you. And ultimately, the purpose of this self, your true self, is to do what Jesus did, which is to become the expression of God in form. And that's called Christ. There's another name, you can use whatever name you want to. It's your divine nature, if you will. So the pathway that began to reveal itself to me was through some work and study of A Course in Miracles and some other materials that followed subsequent to that. I've had a couple of peak experiences since then, Jason. But now And this has been going on now for almost 30 years. So I guess I did spend almost 40 years in the cave, but but it's not a you don't want to get dropped off. We talked about that last week, I think, where getting dropped off out of the airplane in the middle of the ocean, learn how to swim. That's not good. And people want to know what enlightenment is. Enlightenment comes to you one day at a time, one event at a time, and ultimately it is about realizing that God is in all things. And so once we begin to really understand that, then we can begin to stop denying God in all things. And we can stop denying God in our brothers and sisters, and we can stop denying God in ourselves. And as we attune, and we did a little attunement when we started here today, but if we bring ourselves to higher consciousness and we can reside in this level of consciousness, then we can come, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say face to face with our true self. And then we start letting our true self become our teacher. And then our true self eventually becomes who we be as. So in A Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that we need do nothing. But the truth is, we don't need to do anything. What we need is to be. So being present and being in this presence of your divine nature in the upper room brings you to a place beyond fear, beyond the constructs of the planet, the earth, the society that we've built and the constructs around that, government, religions, monetary systems, political systems, etc. And those ideas of otherness and separation begin to fade as a part of our knowing of ourself. And as we begin to do that, then we begin to heal, we begin to slow down the aging process, we begin to experience heaven on earth, literally, because we are the ones that are bringing it about. And so we are the energy of the Creator in action. That's the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That is you, and that is me.
I love that. I love that, Brother T. How did you make the transition if you, when you said the Course in Miracles came to you and you were studying Buddhism before that, how did you make that step from Buddhism into letting go of the Buddhist constraints of suffrage and stepping into spirituality?
Buddhism doesn't really teach suffering. Buddhism teaches you that samsara, right, is what we do to ourselves. It helps us to see our mind. It's about mindfulness and helping us to watch our thoughts. It's a great first step. But literally when I started asking the question, how do you get off the planet? That's when the Course in Miracles came into my life. Now, I want to say that everyone is designing their own pathway. So what my pathway is actually quite different than yours, right? You and your soul are designing your pathway. And a lot of times you may be in conflict with your soul's choices. But things that are come to you and events come to you and occurrences that come to you, and the ego, the mind of fear, always gives everything meaning. But all events are neutral. But thoughts are things. And so what this journey is about is beginning to watch your thoughts, mind your mind, and begin to recognize that the world is reflecting the consciousness that you have attuned to, have evolved to. Ultimately, we evolve to the elevated self of form, which is God in form, which is Christ, right, in form here on the planet. And each of us are bringing that forth. Some are answering the call sooner than others, of course, but it is contagious, it is compelling, and it is a huge attraction that's bringing more and more people into the fold here of self-realization. Beginning to understand your capital S self is real and making that a reality in your life as it begins to express through you, as you, and be you.
I love that. I remember for myself, when I it was like a light switch went on, right? When you step into the spiritual pathway and you see it with your eyes. And I think the Way of Mastery mentions that once your eyes are open to it, you can never not, you know, you'll never unsee it. It's beautiful how you took that step. And something that was difficult for me is, especially when it's people you love, um, to realize that they're on their own path. And how do you do that? Like, it's somebody you love and care about, and maybe their soul has chosen a certain lesson or journey, um, that your egoic self doesn't agree with, and you just want to help them out. But how do you deal with that when it's someone that you love?
Well, really what you're talking about is judgment. You're judging other people. And the only way to get beyond that is to tell yourself, shut up. Get thee behind me. I am not going to listen to the mind of fear, the mind of self-righteousness, and the mind of judgment, because that mind is not who I am. That
Mm,
mind is actually not even sane. That mind doesn't know anything, and it can't learn anything. But it
mm,
sure can judge people. And it wants to paint everybody with its judgment and help them live their life in a should or shouldn't, if then, if this, then that frame of reference. It's all bullshit.
mm,
So all of these things are happening for you, and the loved ones that are around you are there for you, so that you can recognize when you are not residing in the upper room. So that you
mm,
can recognize when your ego has you hoodwinked and it's pulling you down into low vibrational field where sin and sickness and death reside. You, by seeing those things, beginning to recognize those things with your mind, with the vision of love, not necessarily the eye's vision, not the human eyes, but with the power of your mind, you can begin to discern the difference between fear and love. And when
mm.
you recognize you are tuning into the lower level, as soon as you can recognize it, then you can tune out and turn back to love and turn within and say, are you there? And who are you talking to? Your true self. Allow your true self to be your guide. Spend more time looking within than you ever look without, and you will be a happy person indeed.
Oh yeah, I love that. Heaven on earth, right here. And uh, nobody promised us that it would be a easy pathway, right? The
No, we've
more we,
actually been promised that it's a very, very difficult pathway.
mm,
That's why so few people do it, because you have to look at yourself. And people barely look in the mirror, but they never really want to really look at their mind and
mm,
how they're thinking and processing, and judgment and self-righteousness, condemnation and denial of God is causing them to suffer. It's not required at all, but you can learn that way, but there's an easier way to learn.
in what is that easy way?
By telling yourself, I'm not going to listen to that.
Yeah,
Tell your
yeah,
ego to shut up.
right,
Get behind me. I'm in
yeah,
control now. I'm free. I can tell my ego to sit down and shut up. I am not the person I once was, because I was fearful, grasping, clinging, trying to do things the quote unquote right way to be successful, to win the game of chance that life is. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. If you're playing that game, you're already losing. There is no way to win that game. It's seek but do not find. The only way to win in this game of form is to become Christ, become enlightened, begin to get in touch with your true self, because this make-believe self is just a mask. It's not who you are. The personality is not who you are. And you can't fix it, and you can't make it holy, and you can't make it more spiritual. But you can ignore it. And while you're spending time focusing on what it's saying you should and shouldn't do, you are ignoring God in everything you're experiencing.
oh yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense because this I'm transitioning careers here, and I haven't worked at the career that was providing me with income for a couple months now, and I started noticing, like the pinch of finances, and worried about it, and the more I would worry about it, it seems like the smaller the checking account would get, right? And it it was very difficult to not worry about that. Um, but when I quit worrying about it, I mean, I made it through the whole month with, I mean, all the bills got paid somehow. I mean, actually, I know how. One of my friends offered you know a loan without me asking for it, and I was able to pay it back. And but it was when I was worrying about it, that possibility didn't exist for me in things. So it was putting those fears aside and just being present is what it's miraculous when you can actually do that. It's very difficult, like you said.
Well, it is a miracle, because a miracle is a shift of perception out of the mind of worry into the mind of love. And when you are in the mind of love, then you are in the upper room. There is no fear there.
Right.
And there's no lack. There's no scarcity. Think about this, or think about how you're thinking. In other words, if I'm worrying, am I worrying about this present moment? No, everything's okay right now.
Right.
If I'm worrying, I'm actually worrying about what? The future.
Right.
So now I'm projecting, imagining a future, and putting myself there in lack.
Ah.
And the universe says, oh, okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
Reflects right back. Now, you can try to train your ego not to worry, and I wish you good luck with that. Or you can say, shut up and get behind me. The mastery isn't to fix the ego. The mastery is to ignore the ego. Mastery is to stay focused, to stay in alignment with your true nature, your divine nature. If God has already given me all that is, and there's absolutely nothing I can do to prepare for it or to change it, except to resist it, then all I have to do is have a little faith that if I can stay in my primary purpose, keep the main thing, and love you, Jason, I don't have to worry about my needs being met at all. If
Love
I can
that.
help my brothers and sisters feel more love in my presence because I am radiating, I'm attuning to a higher level of consciousness, it will impact them dramatically. And while I'm busy doing God's work, I don't really need to be worried about, will there be food? Will there be housing? Will there be electricity? And you know what? Momentarily, I can get by with pretty much without anything. You know, I can figure out how to survive overnight somewhere, one way or the other. My needs are met. And when I start realizing that my needs are met, then I'm more emboldened than ever to tell the ego, shut up. Get thee behind me. I'm not listening to that insanity. It's insane to believe that God doesn't love you. It's insane to believe that God is not in everything that's happening. And as I will agree with you that you can give your friend credit that he stepped up and ABCD'd, the truth is that's the way Spirit works. Spirit feeds you through compelling others to be loving. Your needs will be met as you extend love, you receive love. But when you try to hoard it all, when you try to keep it all, when you quit sharing it all, sharing nothing of yourself with anybody, you will become homeless, destitute of love, and everything else is degenerative. Fear is degenerative. Love is the genesis of all that exists. So these are just subtle but important changes in how we allow ourselves to think, to make a conscious choice. I'm not going to worry because that's fear. I'm not going to be angry because that's fear. I'm not going to be hateful because that's fear. I'm not going to be apathetic because that's fear. I'm not going to be prideful because that's fear. I'm going to operate from integrity and beyond. And that is to know that God's got this. God created me. And that source, that energy is taking care of beating my heart and feeding my body, nurturing my cells, trillions of cells. And I don't have to worry about any one of them. I don't have to start worrying about that cell over there in my left little finger's not getting what it needs today. That's crazy talk, isn't it?
Yeah.
So neither does all of this self if I stay focused and tuned in to the love of God that is everywhere in everything. But as soon as I step out of that energy and get back down in the lower consciousness of fear, the world is reflective and it will bring to me what I am afraid of most. And I'm really holding myself, I'm literally attacking myself by seeing myself in a state of lack. I'm attacking myself and seeing myself in lack and scarcity is an attack on my very self. I only think of myself as being blessed and being loved, then I will be blessed and I will be loved.
Oh, that touches my heart. Well, Brother T, thank you for walking us down this path of enlightenment. Thank you for sharing moments in your life that we can reflect on and build on and connect with you. And as we connect with you, we connect with ourself and spirit. And thank you for all that you do for our community. And thank you for your words of wisdom this week.
Well, thank you, Jason. I love being here with you and answering these questions. It gives me a chance to be in connection with my guidance. And I love how it comes through because I am the student as well.
I love that. I love that. So for all of you that have tuned in and joined us, thank you. And we will see you next week on another episode of The Second Coming.
We'll see you then. Have a great day.